سيداتي وسادتي، سنفتتح الآن برنامجنا لمهرجان الشارقة لريادة الأعمال 2021 بمناقشة حول مشهد ريادة الأعمال في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، والتي كما تعلمون ستحتفل بيوبيلها الذهبي في بضعة أيام.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to kick off our programming for the 2021 Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival with a discussion on the entrepreneurial landscape of the United Arab Emirates, which, as you all know, will be celebrating its golden jubilee in just a matter of days.
ولا مجال للشك في أن رواد الأعمال قد لعبوا دورا محوريا في جعل البلاد على ما هي عليه اليوم، ومن المؤكد أنهم سيرسمون مستقبلها أيضا. إذن ما هي الدروس التي تعلمناها على مدار 50 عاما الماضية والتي ستستفاد منها الأجيال على مدار 50 عاما القادمة؟ حسنا، هذا ما نأمل أن نتعلمه من هذه الجلسة على خشبة المسرح التي تضم 3 أسماء مؤثرة جدا في مشهد ريادة الأعمال في الإمارات العربية المتحدة.
There is no question that entrepreneurs have played a pivotal role in making the country what it is today. And it's almost certain that they are going to be shaping our future. So what are the lessons we've gained over the 50 years that had passed? Will it inform the next 50 years? Well, that's what we are hoping for, and what we are hoping to learn from this session on stage, featuring 3 very significant names from the UAE's entrepreneurial landscape.
سيداتي وسادتي، رحبوا بمعالي الدكتور أحمد بلهول الفلاسي، وزير الدولة لريادة الأعمال والمشاريع الصغيرة والمتوسطة.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on the stage His Excellency Dr. Ahmed Belhoul Al Falasi, Minister of State for Entrepreneurship and SMEs.
السيد فادي غندور، مؤسس شركة أرامكس ورئيس مجلس إدارة شركة Wamda Capital.
The founder of Aramex and the executive chairman of Wamda Capital, Fadi Ghandour.
وأخيراً وليس آخراً، السيد ماغنس أولسون، الشريك المؤسس لشركة كريم، إحدى الشركات الناشئة الأكثر نجاحاً في الإمارات العربية المتحدة والمنطقة بأكملها.
Of one of UAE's and indeed the region's most successful startups, Careem, Magnus Olsson. And the moderator for this panel is Al Pertellen, founder partner of Enhanced Ventures. Please a round of applause.
أيها السادة، المسرح لكم. Ladies and gentlemen, the stage is yours.
So I think we're matching our photos to the people. Very nice to be here. Thank you very much for this organization. Really, and I think our ecosystem history, has there been a panel like this? We have His Excellency, our State Minister of Entrepreneurship and SMEs. We have the role model, Fadi Ghandour, the original entrepreneur, and now a prolific investor. And we have, of course, Magnus, who is the founder of the original unicorn. So. With that, I want to take us, in a discussion, in a journey about talking about the past of the ecosystem, and then maybe look at the future. I'd like to start with you, Your Excellency. You became the State Minister of Entrepreneurship and SMEs last year. Can you take us to that first day, that exciting day that you take this role, and you walk in to this new role and you think to yourself, this is so exciting, but there are also these challenges. What were your thoughts?
So, first of all, thank you, Najla, for hosting us today. I think the Emirate of Sharjah came a long way in developing its ecosystem, and when I first was appointed as the Minister of State for Entrepreneurship, I came to realize that the work that has been done here was really grassroots, and it was something missing in the ecosystem. So I'd like to commend you for that first, before I start. So when it comes to my appointment, I have two stories. One is exciting, one is the boring one. I'll start with the exciting one. As you know, I was the Minister of State for Higher Education in 2016. So the story I tell socially is that I've joined that batch of 2016 for 4 years, and then when they graduated, I'm now with them to convince them to become entrepreneurs. But the real story is the following. The UAE, when it finds a special focus or an area that needs to focus on, it appoints additional ministers, becomes more of a sovereign ministry. So 4 years back, Minister of Education had 3 ministers because there was a lot of focus on the higher educational system. So in 2016, we had only 3 universities in the top 100 globally. Now we have 10. R&D spending was 0.6%, now it's over 1%. So higher education has evolved over the past 4 years, and now the focus is on entrepreneurship. So my first thought was, I can't do this job with a team of government officials. So my first mandate was to hire entrepreneurs. I already have half my team who are ex-entrepreneurs, successful ones and unsuccessful ones, because you really can't talk on behalf of the ecosystem without having gone through it. So that was the exciting part. Of course, July 2020, as you all know, was a very tough time on the economy as a whole, but much more so on entrepreneurs. And I made it a habit to meet entrepreneurs every quarter. And I recall very vividly in Q3 of 2020, the sentiment was very low. It was very negative. People were feeling the tough times. They just came out of a lockdown. And there was a lot of expectation from the government in the UAE to do what other governments have done. So for example, in Europe and the US, there is the payment protection plan where you pay directly to SMEs. There was expectation from that from the EU government. But when we met again in January, the sentiment was completely different. Business owners were extremely happy to be in the UAE because they were allowed to function. We never went back into a lockdown ever. Yes, we did have weekly COVID meetings where we escalate and de-escalate the COVID restrictions, but the privilege of being able to operate your business through tough times where globally you have different waves was very much valued in the UAE. So that's one thing I've learned through my short time in entrepreneurship, is that keeping a business running is far more important than subsidizing just keeping it afloat. Secondly, again, I said I came from higher education. I'm happy to see a lot of students over here. We're also focusing on changing the culture early stage. You can't train a student for 12 years in school and then 4 years in college to go seek a job and then magically expect them to go become an entrepreneur. So we do have a lot of projects on working with university students as well as K-12 to help them become entrepreneurs, not through curriculum, but through extracurricular activities, making them create their own companies, CEOs, CFOs, trying to build a company, even if it's not real money, but at least going through the process. So again, it's only been a year, and I think we're at a stage where everyone here needs to be able to at least consider entrepreneurship, because you are at the hub, the regional hub. We have Magnus here, who has the first unicorn in the UAE. If you look at the funding the past 4 years, it was about $500 million. Today, we're exceeding $1 billion, so we doubled that. The investment doubled into the UAE. So you really are at a privilege. You're in a country that is open for entrepreneurship. You have live examples of Fadi and Magnus and others who have thrived. So I encourage you all to take that seriously and try. At a young age, your ability to fail, I think, is less of a barrier than you get older. Failing at 40 or 50 or 60 is far more difficult than failing at 20. So try it out, fail young, fail fast, and repeat. Thank you.
That sounds great, and I totally agree that this cultural change is needed. It has happened quite a bit over the years. And Fadi, I think you've witnessed quite a bit. I checked, and next year will be the 40th year of Aramex, I believe. 40 next year. So
40 years, yes.
40 years next year.
It shows.
No, it does not. It's still amazing, full of energy.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, in this journey of yours, first as an entrepreneur, now as someone who's actively supporting entrepreneurs as an investor, what have you seen as like 2 things that dramatically improved and 1 thing that still needs improvement?
Thank you, Alper. So, look, I mean, the ecosystem is bubbling. I mean, during my days when I first got to think that I could launch a business back in the early 1980s, I mean, I tell entrepreneurs they're lucky for what they have now. So it's the ecosystems are about funding, are about government support, are about ease of doing business, the bureaucratic process being easy, open borders, entrepreneurs having the ability to travel from one place to another. All of those are at the core. I mean, you can't have entrepreneurship, you can't have thriving economies without having those. Back in the 80s, it was like, you know, you had to plow your way through and never accept a no, and operate sometimes when they tell you no, you assume or you show them that you didn't hear. So no, you cannot do that, and you ignore that and you continue doing until they basically say, okay, then that's a good idea and we're gonna support you and get forward with it. So you don't need to have entrepreneurs to struggle by continuously facing obstacles, specifically from the agencies and the institutions that are looking to build and develop the economies that they are in. Let them suffer and struggle in how they build their product so that they're competitive in the marketplace, and ease everything else for them. Let the marketplace decide who wins and who doesn't win, and ease everything else, because you're building these entrepreneurs are building the businesses of the future, are changing the face of the economies. They are bringing hope to the young graduates from our universities and the talent that we need to attract to our economies globally and regionally. So that is happening now. So I mean, lots is happening. So I cannot say what is not happening. You just need to do more of it, and you need to continue to do more of it, because if we're thinking of the post-oil economy down, I don't know, 50 years down the road, then you need to think of entrepreneurship as an infrastructure type of thing. Infrastructure means we need to believe that these are the people that are building the future of our countries, really, not only our economies. They are the future. And entrepreneurs, I should say, are not necessarily people that are only building startups that we are celebrating today, maybe. I mean, entrepreneurs, there are entrepreneurs in government, people that think that the status quo is not sustainable and we need to challenge it and we need to do things better. It's a mindset. How do we actually get an entrepreneurial society? An entrepreneurial society is not about entrepreneurs only. It's about people that think that things can be changed and can be done better in government, in massive corporations, and in the very early stage startups. So I think there is definitely that awareness. I mean, the fact that we have a minister for entrepreneurship, and that is going across the Arab world. In every Arab country today, there is a minister of entrepreneurship, and that's a recognition that these are not necessarily young. I'm still an entrepreneur in many ways, but so young at mind, they are the people that are going to be building the next 50 years, if you want. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
I want to go from this 4-year journey. Magnus and I, we have about a decade-long journey in entrepreneurship in the region, based out of UAE. Even 10 years ago, we did not have a state minister of entrepreneurship, right? There were 2 funds or 3 VC funds active in the region, maybe, right? And in fact, when Najla said it would be nice to have people believe in dreamers before those dreams come true, 2 people really loudly chuckled. It was me and Magnus sitting next to each other. Because how many no's we've heard, and how many people said to us, you cannot do this here, right? Take us back 9 years ago, 2012, right? You launched Careem. What were challenges that you had that when you look at entrepreneurs that are starting today, you say, oh, they have it too easy?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum. Najla, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is awesome. It's so cool. I think an ecosystem feeds off the energy, and we need people like Najla to bring in the energy. It's contagious and it's beautiful. And we need these events in person to again feed off each other on the energy. So when we started Careem 9.5 years ago, people of course thought we were crazy. I think most of all, my co-founder Mudassir's parents told him, we put you through school, you went to great schools, you went to Stanford, and then you're going to become driving a taxi. Seriously, is this what we have made of you? Jokes aside, when we started, it was a little tricky. I remember spending 80,000 dirhams on our first office, and that was the cheapest office we could find. I remember at least once a week, if not twice a week, going to the TCOM building and standing in line to apply for visas for new colleagues that wanted to join us. I remember a couple of times when Careem completely went dark. No one could book a car because we had forgotten to pay our due bill, and all our captains were on the same due account. So if we didn't pay the bill, then the network just went dark. I remember going fundraising, and we were asked the question, what's the yield? Is it 6 or 7% I will get per year if I invest in Careem? I remember trying to hire talent who said, why would we join this when we can go into oil and gas, or we can go into consulting or banking or something proper, this whole startup thing. And I remember spending so many hours trying to convince our colleagues that getting equity in the business and being co-owners would actually, bring for a bright future. It's not just about having a salary, and it's about building and being an owner. So there is so many things that has shifted, and most of all, it's a mindset of people being daring and people being bold and wanting to go out and build. And like Fadi said about infrastructure, when you are an entrepreneur, you have an idea, you have a problem you want to solve, and ideally you can focus on that problem and you just solve that. In our case, we started with saying, it's hard to move around reliably from point A to point B, so let's try to solve that. But in the process, we realized, oh man, we need to get the captains some device in the cars. We need to get SIM cards. It's not easy at scale. So, we almost felt we should build a telecom company in the part of building Careem. When we paid our captains once a month in the early days, now we pay them daily. In the early days, we paid them once a month. And the way we paid them was all the captains came to our office, and I personally hand wrote the checks to every single captain. Hafiz buy 347 dirhams. Kushid buy 1,600 dirhams. There was no banking infrastructure to have an API where you could just upload the payments and people would just get it in their accounts. Everything was very manual, so we had to go very, very deep. Google Maps was not reliable in the region. We had to build our own mapping infrastructure. So I think the biggest thing that has happened over the last 9 years or so is that a lot of this basic infrastructure, whether it's on the telecom side, on the banking side, on the regulation side, on the starting a business, all of that has improved so that entrepreneurs today can really focus on the one problem they're solving and not having to build the rails for everything underneath. I think that's the biggest thing, and the second thing is obviously the mindsets. Now, these days, it's a bit of a rock star situation to be an entrepreneur versus being sort of a crazy lunatic type of situation.
The parents don't question as much.
And by the way, we should remember that we always call it unicamels and not unicorns. Unicamels are unicorns being born in the desert.
I'd like to point out something that, yes, we list a lot of challenges that we faced as entrepreneurs, but all three of us here were not from the UAE, and I would argue that we could live anywhere in the world, and we chose to go through this journey in this country because this country was exceptional in comparison to anywhere that we found was a good place to do business, right? For that, I'd like to have an applause for UAE. it's really an amazing place, really. Like, we're not from here, we call this home, as Najla said, so it's been an amazing journey. Now, looking forward, Dr. Ahmed, there is you have a new initiative, right? Can you tell us about this new initiative that you've launched, the Entrepreneurial Nation initiative? Because you've taken, I think, a lot of these challenges. A lot of them are solved, many are to be solved, and you're paving the way for the future. Please tell us about this initiative.
Yeah, sure. So when we looked into the ecosystem, we realized that there were tough times that people like Fadi and Magnus had to go through, and we tried to create a platform by the ecosystem for the ecosystem. So if you noticed, we do have public sector partners, so Emirates Development Bank, where I'm the vice chairman. We do have Etihad Credit Insurance. If you're a physical SME trying to export, we would help you with that. But the majority of our partners are private sector because they do see value in serving entrepreneurs, either to get access to technology and work with them as they grow up, or actually as a business revenue generation once they become bigger. So the whole idea here is to try and move entrepreneurs from micro to small or small to medium to help them grow past stages. And we have different tracks. We have something on digitization, and we're actually having quite a high bar. So for example, for our track with Cisco, the requirement is to be 50 million dirham revenue. Right? These are sizable companies to be able to be eligible. But again, we have different products for different stages of the life of the company. And again, we said, let's do it as a public-private partnership. So we ensure that we're able to help companies and struggling entrepreneurs to make that transition, to grow, either through funding, is it through digitization, is it through expansion globally. We're also now trying to create bilateral agreements where we allow companies in the UAE to be able to have a soft landing as they go abroad. So as much as we say we try to complement the ecosystem, our approach is never to step in when we're not required. So if something's being covered by the private sector, we don't intervene. So on the startup phase, there are plenty of hubs in the region. So we're not very active on that. The only thing we did there was account opening. So through Emirates Development Bank, you can open an account within 48 hours. Now, granted, it's only in dirhams and local currency, but it's a start for you at least to be able to operate. There's no fees and there's no minimum balance. So again, very targeted. And a big part of what we do is similar to what Najla is doing now, which is students in universities and schools to try as much as we can to increase that funnel of entrepreneurs. So in summary, it's the first batch. We're already getting a lot of BD requests from other partners that want to offer their services for startups. And we thought this would be the best model when we get the private sector to work into encouraging other entrepreneurs to make it through as they grow through the cycle.
So one of the goals of the initiative is to have 20 unicorns born here by 2031. How much of the attention is for unicorn making versus making small companies, medium companies, large, and large to unicorn?
So it's a very good question. So if you ask me transparently, we're not tracking exactly how we engineer 20 unicorns. It's an aspirational target. Our goal is to make sure that that journey is available. So for example, if you look at it from a funding size, VCs are very smart. We're seeing later stage investments coming in. Kitobi just raised Series C later. Even the funding size at each stage, early stage, Series A, Series B, has been doubling and tripling in size. So we truly believe the ecosystem is growing. We will step in with a 1 billion dirham equity fund to fill in gaps for companies that might not provide necessarily the high trajectory that the VCs would like, but they'd be appealing to us as government because they're strategic to us. So something like food security, water, even sustainable energy as well. So again, we are not measuring and reverse engineering if we need 20 unicorns, what exactly needs to be done. It's an aspirational target, but we are very much focused on making that transition from micro to small to medium, making sure that flow is over there available. I can give you an example. I was at HCT a few days back, and we had one female entrepreneur who already makes 1 million dirham revenue from her home, and she's quite comfortable where she is. She doesn't want to actually open a store. So we're trying to get people to move at different stages. We have examples of companies that are generating 20 to 30 million dirham in the UAE market, but they feel it's a barrier to go international. So that's where we work with them, with companies like UPS, for example, to explain to them what are the import requirements in different markets, how can we make it easier. So our role simply is to help ensure the progression of entrepreneurs across the different stages of the cycle.
Sounds great. And Fadi, what is your view when you look at the progression of like venture building from pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, C, and then all the way to exit? Where do you see the major gap in our ecosystem where entrepreneurs need the most support?
So I think there are gaps everywhere, if you want my honest opinion. And if I would have said differently, I wouldn't be fair to the ecosystem. Look, funding is not the only thing that is needed to build companies, but it's essential. So, I mean, it's critical. And many of the other elements you could get. So you could have an entrepreneur who's talented, he's built a team, he knows how to build technology, he knows how to solve problems, he understands the issues, or they understand the issues, he or she, I should say. So, I mean, they have everything, but without funding to fuel the growth of these businesses and to be patient enough. I can't emphasize enough the issue of patience. So it takes time. It takes time to show the difference on the ground when you're solving problems. And so you need patient capital with you and to accept the issue of bleeding, meaning, companies will take time to become profitable. I mean, there is this assumption that, Careem is not making money, it's not going to make it. But it will make money. It takes time. Look, Aramex it's in its 40th year now. It took us maybe 10 years to become really cash flow positive, and we have been profitable ever since. But it took us 10 years, right? And then we went public again. So the issue of venture funding is about risk. It's about patience. There's no hit and run. You're not going to make your money overnight. And all these big news stories that you hear, it's a unicorn and they made 10x and 12x. But when did they start so that they can make their 10 or 12? And don't look at the anomalies. It's not about these outliers that, the big ones that can make a difference. Don't dream of these things. Everyone that is going to make money in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, whether the entrepreneur or the investors or the employees of that organization, it takes no less than 5 to 7 years, if not more than that. So patience and plenty of capital in the very early stage. So we need lots of angels. There are angel investors now, but not enough. We want more of them. And we want to prove to them that you make money. I mean, I don't know if Careem likes to talk about this, but the angels that invested in Careem made a heck of a lot of money. A heck of a lot of money. And fantastic. And they reinvest. Because the ecosystem, once it believes, it continues to invest in itself. And that virtuous cycle of continuously recycling your energy and funding into the ecosystem is what is going to make the ecosystem. So you need angels, you need seed stage investors, you need Series A investors and B investors. In the region, we could see maybe the seed, Series A, a little bit of Series B, not much. Entrepreneurs have to go and I'm sorry to use the word, but beg and knock on tens and tens and tens of doors instead of going to one big fund that gives them that $10, $20 million check, they have to go to 100, maybe, 10, each giving them 1 or 2. And it's good that you're democratizing, but entrepreneurs are ending up spending like 6 months to 9 months of time to fundraise rather than focusing on building the business. And so there needs to be a bold move by some of the big players, and I won't name names, that they come and say, we're going to make Series B funding, and we're going to make Series C funding. I don't worry about Series C, the later stage, because the big boys globally come to Series C. When Careem wanted to do their, I remember when they did their B round, because I was around, I was a board member eventually. But I also remember when they were starting to show growth and accelerated growth and exponential growth, and then people will knock on the door globally. We also don't want to lose, as much as we want to call for open, we're open borders, anybody can come and invest. But I tell our, and this is my final statement on this, I tell our national entrepreneur investors, national funders in the region, not only in the UAE, step up. This is our ecosystem. You can make money in it. Invest in it. That's how you're going to make money in it. Don't wait for the big boys from outside to prove that we have an ecosystem. The ecosystem works. The ecosystem works. It's happening, and a lot of us are participating in it. And finally, family offices and those that have been lucky to do well, it's time that you invest in the entrepreneurship and digital ecosystem in the region. Stop being way too conservative. Stop being way too conservative, because this will benefit you at the end of the day. So that's what I think is missing.
The challenge of fundraising is definitely real. My friend Ronaldo Mushawar, founder of Souk, when he finally exited, he turned to me and said, "Finally, I can stop being a professional beggar." Right? And so if you are a founder in this region, anywhere in the world, but still a bit more amplified in this region, you spend just too much time fundraising instead of focusing on products and customers. One thing that also takes patience is talent. You have what you built ended up resulting in what's called now the Careem Mafia. We benefited from it. 2 of our founders are ex-Careem managers. Tell us a bit about that as kind of like maybe advice on how to get talent, how to grow talent.
Thank you. This is probably my favorite topic. I think everything is about talent. It's not about companies, it's not about funding. Of course, funding is a critical ingredient, but it's about talent. And the region has absolutely no shortage of talent. We actually have amazing talent. The challenge has been that we haven't had opportunities for this talent to learn and grow and experience things. We haven't had any, particularly in the tech space, we haven't had any Facebooks or Twitters or Google that you can join and learn from. So for those that have the opportunity, they leave the region and they go to the States, they go to Silicon Valley, and they work for these companies. They gain the experience, and then many of them, they get stuck over there. And even if they want to come back here, they would not come back and work for one of the large banks or one of the large conglomerates. It's just not going to be exciting. What has happened over the past 9 years or so, and Careem is one example, but there's many other examples as well. What has happened is that the ecosystem is developing, companies are happening, opportunities are presenting themselves. So talent is realizing, wow, this entrepreneurial journey is actually an option. In Careem, we started seeing maybe 5-6 years into the journey that we could go to the valley, we could look at people there and say, come to the region, particularly to people that have some affinity to the region, come back home. There are amazing opportunities to build over here. And it has been happening. And we see it now, the Careem Mafia, or Careem Cartel, people call it different things. I think there's about slightly more than 100 companies that have been co-founded or have Careem colleagues, ex-Careem colleagues in leadership positions. And this is amazing to see. This is it is happening. The ecosystem is happening. Now, if you think about the future, currently I think there are so many businesses to be built in the region for the region. Let's remember, the region is amazing. When we were pitching Careem, we were always saying from Morocco to Pakistan, including Turkey, 700 million people, average age is 25, people are very young, smartphone penetration above 50%, so people are connected. This is like an untapped region. And if you look at online spending, it's about 2-3% of the overall economy versus 20-30% in developed markets. So as our region moves online, we are creating a $500 billion a year opportunity. It's massive. So if you're a business person, this is like amazing, right? Now, a lot of that business happens here. So you want to be here and set up a business here. And that's what we're seeing. A lot of the startups that I'm seeing, they are building and solving local problems, and they're doing it on the ground, whether in the UAE or in the rest of the region. I think looking forward, once we have had the talent here, once the talent has been practicing for a couple of years building 1, 2, 3 ventures, then let's take on the global problems. There is nothing saying that we cannot be in the region and take on the toughest, hardest problems of the world and solve them from here, right? And this is really where I'm seeing where we're going. And how are we going to make that happen? We have to make the UAE the preferred place for talent. Particularly these days, post-COVID, it's all a remote world. Careem is completely remote first. You can work wherever you want. So why would people want to live here and work from here? Because the UAE is an amazing place. It's not just the sunshine, it's the fact that we are probably the safest country in the world from COVID. We have been looked after from healthcare. But yeah, it's worth an applaud. But also amazing talent, they need things. They want to have schooling for their kids. They want to have healthcare for their families. And all these things can be expensive. Like, we need to solve for the livability of top talent. And you know, what does top talent need? Founders need something, techies need maybe something else, investors need maybe something else. Figure out what all of these key people need, bring them here, and it's already happening. You know, thank God for Golden Visa and all the amazing initiatives that are happening. Bring the talent here, just remove as much regulation and roadblocks as possible, and it will just happen. Like Fadi said, it has been happening for the past 10 plus years, and it's happening even faster and faster and faster.
As we're out of time, I just want to take final words of advice, because some of this talent is here, right? And it's accelerating. We just hired someone from Colombia after 2 phone calls. She just got on a plane and moved here without ever having been here. UAE has amazing brands that can attract this talent. Final words of advice. Fadi, what would you recommend to a budding entrepreneur that's just getting started right now? Very briefly, just...
Sorry, you're saying what would I give advice to a budding entrepreneur now?
Yeah, what is your 2-sentence advice that, what should they do?
2-sentence advice, you're in it for a long term, you're a builder, where's your team? Nothing happens with one individual. You need a team, and the ecosystem will support you once you have that.
Team, great. And Your Highness, Dr. Ahmed, what is your advice to budding entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm not an entrepreneur, so I can't give advice. Almost there. Well, I'll tell you what, here's a secret. Actually, Magnus came to me, this was in Ramadan of, was it 2012? Pitching to me Careem, and I turned him down. I still kick myself in the back for that. So but to be honest, from where I sit today, looking at the ecosystem overall, I can tell you, do consider entrepreneurship. You do not underestimate what you have here in the UAE. The talent that's available, the ecosystem that's available in the UAE is second to none in the region. So if I were you, I would actually seriously consider giving it a shot. What we have found out, to be fair, was if you have 3 years of experience, you're 85% more likely to succeed. So I still would pursue entrepreneurship, but I would also value experience that you would gain from a corporate setting. For transferable skills, you need to know how to hire, how to deal with procurement and all of that, and how to build a business plan. But equally important, sometimes within the same sector, you would also find a solution that your blue chip company would overlook. So entrepreneurship and possibly experience in one of these startups would be even more valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists for such engaged discussion. Thank you, Najla and Shira, for setting up such a beautiful stage for us to have this conversation. And thank you, UAE, for being home. Thank you very much.